My name is Sarah Fornace, and I'm one of the 5 co-artistic directors of Manual Cinema. I'm on what we call team sound, visuals. The visual team does a lot of the direction and choreography and the making of the puppets and the making of all of the things that you see in a Manual Cinema show.
My name's Kyle Vegter. I'm on team sound and music. So me and one other artistic director, Ben Kaufman, do all of the music and sound design for Manual Cinema shows.
Sure. Manual Cinema is a company that makes live theatrical shows that look like movies. So that when you come to see a Manual Cinema show, there's a big screen above, like in a movie theater. And on that screen, you can watch what appears to be a silent movie. But then below on the stage, we always have a team of puppeteers with overhead projectors and hundreds of puppets making the animation live in front of you. In addition to the puppetry and the overhead projectors, all of our shows also have original music and original sound design. And all of that is performed live by musicians who are on stage. So every time you come see a Manual Cinema show, it is different because we make the movie right there for the audience that time, every single time that we do it.
Yeah, we started making live work. So we, none of us are from Chicago, but all of us came to Chicago from different places. 3 of the 5 co-artistic directors went to school at the University of Chicago. And we all just kind of met as friends of friends in our early 20s after college. Sarah and Julia, one of the other co-artistic directors, had worked together at a different company called Red Moon Theater, doing an overhead projector shadow puppetry version of Swan Lake, right, Sarah? Yeah, Julia was in that, and I helped demo it. But I feel like where we really met was that this company was doing like a really big spectacle on the lake front. So it was like big pageant puppets, like big pieces of cardboard painted like the moon, and we climbed up out of the lake with our moon puppets. So yeah, very, very different than Manual Cinema stuff. But yeah, Julia did a show with them that used overhead projectors, and performed Swan Lake with the orchestra, with the symphony orchestra. Right, and so Julia just enjoyed working with shadow puppetry on overhead projectors. She found an overhead projector in the garage of the apartment she was renting, and wanted to make her own show with it. There was like a small experimental puppetry festival in town that asked her to make a piece. And Julia was kind of the one to like assemble us. So she asked Sarah to work with her because they had worked together on the project Sarah just talked about. And Sarah was busy, but she volunteered her partner, now husband, Drew, who is a visual artist and theater artist, and worked with Julia to make a lot of the puppets for the very first show. And then Julia asked, Ben and I played in a band at the time, and Julia asked if she could use some of the music from one of our records for the show. And we said sure, and volunteered to write some original music for it. And so we did that. And yeah, we made this kind of 20-minute kind of proto Manual Cinema show called The Ballad of Lula Del Rey. It was very slow moving, just one overhead projector and a screen. And yeah, just had a good time making it. And we kept getting asked to perform it in different places around the city. So we performed it in, tiny little theaters and bars and people's living rooms, just kind of wherever we could. And then Drew had an idea for another show, which eventually became Ada Ava. And so we just kind of kept making stuff And yeah, at some point we needed to become a business to support all of the stuff that we were making. So yeah, it was a pretty organic process.
And really, I think that is one of the reasons manual cinema is still around, is because we had a somewhat of a happy accident with our stage setup. So when manual cinema first started out, we performed behind the screen. So these overhead projectors and the puppeteers you wouldn't have seen. It was very much like a traditional shadow puppet show. So you could see the band, and then you could see the shadow screen. And yeah, like Kyle was saying, we would invite people up, and at the end they were like, what's going on? Like, is this a slow film? Is this a weird animation? And we were like, no, we make it all live. But no one understood that. And then we had to go perform in a theater that was huge. It was just like really big, bigger than anywhere we'd performed before. And we couldn't make our screen that's on stage any bigger because it's sized to the human body. It's like the right size for me to be in like human profile inside of it. So we were like, okay, let's get a second big screen and we'll just put it above. And so they can see it big on the big screen. And as soon as we hung that, we were like, oh, if we have a second screen, we can turn the whole setup around and show the audience like behind the scenes. Like we can show them the manual part of manual cinema. And you know, that was not like, we didn't have that idea and then do it. Like we happened on it by accident. But I would say like, I don't think we would still be around if we hadn't had that accident. Because I feel like once we turned the setup around, at least for visual team, it was like, yeah, this is what we do. Like we show the audience how we do it while we do it. And so, yeah, we don't get very many happy accidents because there's so much planning involved in a manual cinema show. But when we have them, we try to grab them. So, you know, one thing we think about is using breath and gesture. So, you know, Ada, when she looks in the mirror and thinks that she sees her sister's face, you know, she might go, so it's finding that the sense of surprise through breath and gesture. We also use cinematic editing. So for instance, we might cut to a close-up and show like just the head of the puppet. And if we say want to show that the puppet is interested in something, we might lean that head forward and just like blink an eyelash. So there's like some like very, very kind of simple movements, but when you put them together in a sequence, because we are also used to watching films, like we understand that cut to close up means, oh, we're about to see her perspective on it. Or, oh, she's paused, maybe this is something important. And then when we cut to the next shot, we see what the character's seeing with her. So that kind of like, we lean on that language of Western cinema. But in terms of emotional storytelling, I would say that the sound and the music do a lot of work. When we're practicing as actors and puppeteers, you know, sometimes we find ourselves pushing really hard to try to get the story to work or get the emotions to read. But then there comes a day in rehearsal when the music comes in, and the music is really like an omniscient narrator. Like it can set the scene, it can go inside the character's head and tell us how the characters are feeling. And then as puppeteers, you know, we can like lean back and just kind of dance on top of the music and don't feel like we're trying to force out information or moments in the story. We can just like breathe with the characters and feel the characters on top of the music.
Yeah, totally. And like I think that's totally true about the music. And then from a sound design perspective, we're always trying to exaggerate what stories the sounds are telling of the world. So we mix in 4 channels. So there's speakers behind the audience and in front of the audience, just like if you were to watch a film in a movie theater. But in our sound designs, sounds move quite a bit more around the room. So in one of our shows, if a door opens, the door might open across the entire room. So it might start, the sound might start over here and end way over there. And that's really just to give the audience a sense of space, a sense of being in the same space as the story, and to create like some emotion from just like the sounds of the world of the story. So there's 5 co-artistic directors, and we the 5 of us also own the company. And then normally we have 4 full-time staff. Because of COVID, we're not touring, so we only have 1 additional full-time staff right now. And then in a given year, I'd say we work with like 20 or 30 outside actors, puppeteers, musicians to tour the work. And so sometimes those are people that are working with us for like the entire year, going on lots of different tours. And sometimes they're hired just for 1 tour. Yeah, it kind of depends. So.
And we tend to hire people back a lot. So, you know, if somebody has learned Frankenstein, we know that they will also be good at maybe learning a track in the end of TV or in other shows. So if you work with us once and you're good at it and you like the medium, we try to keep bringing you back to do more and more projects. Especially because for a lot of our shows, the artistic directors will originate roles in it. We might play like the music in that show, or like I might perform one of the characters, like I perform Mary Shelley and Victor Frankenstein, as well as puppeteering. But then when the artistic directors need to go and make a new show, usually we'll cast people to take over our roles for the touring. So yeah, we're always looking for people who enjoy making manual cinema to come and join us. It's a good question, because years where we do shows like Edinburgh or we do a sit down in Chicago, we could do 30 shows in 30 days. But usually when we're touring, we're doing, we have travel days in between. So we might go to Texas and do 2 shows, and then fly to Oregon and do a show, and then fly to Canada and do 3 shows. So there's like a lot of, we're on the road for 2 or 3 weeks, but we're only gonna do 10 shows like in that time. But usually when it's not the pandemic, you know, we've got like 10 different shows that we do on the road. So Ada Ava and End of TV and Frankenstein. And for the past few years, especially in the busy part of the year, in the fall and the winter, we'll have 2 or 3 shows out at the same time. So 3 different casts will be touring to different places with different shows.
I'd say it's probably like around 100 in like a really busy year. But like Sarah said, it varies pretty widely from year to year. We've gone to a lot of countries in Europe. We've been to China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Australia, Egypt, Chile. Iran, Chile in South America, obviously. Yeah, Saudi Arabia,
We've
Canada.
been to every continent except Antarctica.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The work, the lack of language really helps the work travel. So there's stories that like you don't have to speak English to really go on the same emotional journey that an English speaker would with our show, with our shows. So they tend to travel pretty well, which has been amazing for us. Like that's something that we didn't really set out to do, but it's been huge for the company, and we've gotten to travel to a lot of really beautiful and interesting places.
I meet so many different people
Totally.
that we wouldn't have otherwise, since we've been able to tour the world with the shows.
Yeah. So we're also a film company. We also make a fair amount of usually short films that go online most of the time, and just like we do like animation work and sometimes film scoring work. So we have a lot of the equipment to do live streaming. Like we have a lot of cameras, we have a lot of video switchers. We use a lot of those in our live work. as well. This past summer, we were celebrating our 10-year anniversary, and our original plan was to rent a theater in Chicago for a month and put up a different show of ours each week, starting with our very first show and ending with our most recent show. So to kind of show like the progression of the company over 10 years. Obviously, at least in the States, we could not do that in August. That just wouldn't be safe. So we quickly pivoted to doing that online. So we made the archival recordings of those shows available for a week throughout the month. But we wanted there to be a live element to the celebration. So we created a 10-minute short that was made specifically to be performed live and streamed out to an audience. And it was a short story, kind of just about being in lockdown, like what that experience is like. But it was really fun, and I feel like we learned a lot about just like how to make work for this medium, for the medium of streaming. And we built on that big time in the fall, when we created an adaptation of Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. It's been a story that we've always wanted to do. Ghost stories work really well in our medium, and we just have an affinity for them, and it's basically a Christmas ghost story. So it's always been something we've wanted to do. But normally in the fall, we're touring a ton. We're just like on the road and never have time to sit down and like make a new piece that would premiere in December around the holidays in the States. But this year we had a fall that was totally free of touring. And so we created an adaptation of Christmas Carol that was made for the medium of live streaming. So we performed, it was around 20 shows from our studio here in Chicago, and live streamed each performance. So audience members could buy tickets to see a specific performance. We worked with a ton of presenters, mostly from around the United States, different theaters that we had been to in the past that helped to commission the piece. And then they also sold tickets to their audiences in various cities around the US. And yeah, it was much more successful than we thought it would be. It seemed like the right kind of show at the right time. And yeah, it was a really interesting experiment for us to make work specifically to be streamed. Yeah, so, and that's where we're at. So we'll see how 2021 goes, but we made it through 2020.
And we're kind of like inventing new puppet styles for it. So, you know, our shows that are live are paced in a certain way so that the audience can experience the like muchness of it, so that they can look at the overhead projectors, look at the big screen, look at the bands. So if you were to just watch them online, they would seem slow because they're giving a lot of like room for the audience to look all over the stage. So these illustrated puppets, they're just made out of different color paper with illustrations on them. We started doing this for some video work, and then we're really leaning into these guys for the live stream work. So these are all these are the three different ghosts from the Christmas Carol. This is a Ghost of Christmas Present. And we just feel like the detail of them works really well in live stream. And also these take a lot of time to make, and like are a lot of like detail work on them. So it's just the production process right now like lets us do these more than when we're making shows that we also need to figure out how to stage live.